Being a certified card-carrying English major, I remember that it was Emily Dickinson who said that hope is that thing with feathers. But I don't remember reading the poem. That's my first confession to you this morning. I'm sure I do, but I'd have to go look it up. Who has time for that? My second confession is, though I have tried, I've never become a good Buddhist. Born a Unitarian Universalist, I take great and deep inspiration from Buddhism, but I have struggled with that thing about non-attachment. For years, I had a challenging relationship with hope, because hope is an attachment. And then, during a period of grieving, I stumbled across an old Buddhist tale. And it was the story that helped me understand why, try as I might, I've never been a very good Buddhist, and helped me be okay with that. Now, in everything I say, certainly this morning, but always from this place, I'm sharing with you my perspective. If there's any wisdom, it's hard-won. Your mileage, always remember, will and may vary. I don't remember when or where the story that I'm about to tell you was created. I think it is from the Taoist tradition in Japan, but I can't be sure. And yes, I'm sure I could ask ChatGPT, but that doesn't feel quite right. So the story, as I remember, it's a short one, goes like this. The monks lived and prayed and chanted up the hill from a small village. They went down to ask for rice every day, as is their custom. So they got to know the villagers very well. One afternoon, a young novitiate comes rushing back up to the head monk. "Father, Father, the young girl has died in the village, the one that we were nursing, the one that was sickly for so long. She has died." And the head monk bursts into tears. The novice says, "But Master, you have told us that love is an attachment that we are strive to relinquish. What are your tears? That attachment is an illusion that we should struggle to let go of." And the aged monk, through his tears, looks up and says to his young apprentice, but the loss of the child is the greatest illusion of all. The grief of losing a child is the greatest illusion of all." I don't know where it comes from, but I've always held that story as reason not to worry about attaching too much to some things that one is drawn to attach to. And if grief is the thing with feathers, I've been trying to watch the birds more carefully these last couple weeks as I prepared to talk to you about hope today. And the doves, and sometimes the little quails up when I'm walking the dog, and the other little birds that flit around that my dog wants to chase after all the time. But instead of them, I've noticed that I've felt the most hopeful going back and reading a book that was the common read of my minister's study group this year. And we met the second week of November. I joined them remotely. It's the Ohio River Group, and we started in the Ohio River Valley. We meet just outside Cincinnati. the weather was such and the airports were such that most of us joined online this time, which was less than ideal, but better than nothing. Our theme this year, we always pick a theme, and then there are a number of papers on that theme. Our theme was freedom. And our shared read was Timothy Snyder's most recent book on freedom. You may know Snyder from his book on tyranny. Well, he chose perhaps a more happy topic this time. And I've been doing this work for nearly 30 years, ministry. This is the first time I have wanted to bring a book and read it to all of you as long as you'll listen. And the topic of the book is freedom. It's not hope, but I feel and felt hope while reading it. So I don't know how this is going to go. It may land completely flat. I'd like to read some of this book for you. I recommend the whole thing. Don't get me wrong. This doesn't let you off the hook. But he starts the book talking to people in war-torn Ukraine. And then he takes their experience and talks about a framework for freedom that he finds. And I'm just going to read, and I'll look up as much as possible. And if it gets too much, just raise your hand and say, ixnay, ixnay. And my passages, the couple of passages I'm going to read are from scattered points in the book, so this isn't going to be longitudinal. But the first gives his framework for understanding freedom. Snyder begins, "We tend to think of freedom just as freedom from, as negative. But conceiving of freedom as an escape or an evasion does not tell us what freedom is or how it would be brought into the world. Freedom, too, positive freedom, involves thinking about who we want to become. What do we value? How do we realize our values in this world? Even if we don't think of freedom as positive, we won't get freedom in the negative sense. We won't even get freedom in the negative sense, since we will be unable to tell what is in fact a barrier, how barriers can be taken in hand and become tools, and how tools can extend our freedom. Freedom from," he continues, "is a conceptual trap. It is also a political trap in that it involves self-deception, contains no program for its own realization, and offers opportunities to tyrants." Both a philosophy and a politics of freedom have to begin with freedom too. Freedom is positive. It is about holding virtues in mind and having some power to realize them. A bit later into the book, he writes, "Deep now into a century, ours, that was the stuff of dreams in the 1970s and the subject of confident predictions in the 90s, we find ourselves at a turning point. Whether we will be free will depend on us, not just on what we do, but on why we do it, namely our ideals." He continues, "Without ideals, it is impossible to be a realist. If you forget about freedom, you misunderstand the world and change it for the worse. The initial American reaction to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February of 22 clarifies the point. As Russia massed its troops on the Ukrainian border, I was in New Haven, where I had been teaching for 2 decades. On the Monday before the invasion, I took part in a remote meeting, a doctoral dissertation defense in Ukraine. Ilya Chodoluma was defending a history thesis about a Ukrainian literary critic of Jewish origin who translated Hamlet while hiding from the Nazis. Ilya passed his exam, then enlisted in the Ukrainian Territorial Defense. On the Tuesday, 2 days before Russia invaded, Snyder continues, I was invited to join a class at Yale's School of Management. The colleague attended the class had seen me on television the prior Sunday and knew that I held an unusual opinion about Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, that if Russia invaded, he would stay in Kyiv, and that Ukraine would fight. My colleague had invited security advisors to former Presidents Barack Obama and Donald Trump to participate remotely in the class, and he asked them to comment on my prediction. Talking down from the big screens, they all disagreed with me. For them, it was self-evident that Zelensky would flee. Like the people inside the Kremlin, the people inside the D.C. Beltway believed that Ukraine would fall within 3 days. The Russian and American conventional wisdom was identical. On Thursday, Russia invaded, and my student reported to his unit. Zelensky stayed in Kyiv, and Ukrainians fought. The American experts had excluded freedom as a factor in the world, so their prediction was incorrect. They had patiently explained that Zelensky would leave the country. American intelligence officers advised him to do so. All were representing an American consensus. Americans had told themselves for decades that freedom was negative, that it represented a clearing away of barriers by larger forces. If you believe in the primacy of those larger forces, then you have no choice when they seem to turn against you. You run. And you cannot imagine that others would behave any differently. On the Friday, the day after Russia's invasion began, Zelensky posted a video of himself and other high government officials in Kyiv. The president is here. We, your leaders, are staying. This was a transformational example of freedom of speech. Like freedom in general, freedom of speech is not negative, but positive. Not about the barriers, but the person. Not about absence, but presence. We protect speakers who speak the truth because truth represents the power, threatens the power of tyrants. Zelensky was speaking truth amid the lies of Russian propagandists who claimed that he had abandoned the city. He was speaking his truth to power because Russia was invading with terrifying force. Zelensky was putting his body at risk for what he knew to be true. Indeed, it was what he was doing with his body, staying, that was the truth. Snyder continues. When I asked Zelensky why he had remained in Kyiv, he said that he could not have done otherwise. Explaining his choice, he began not from the specific predicament, dramatic though it was, and not even from himself. He spoke of his love for his parents and what he had learned from them. He had not chosen them, and yet in his love for them, he was free. He compared that love to the decision to remain in the capital as the war began, something self-evident. Staying was not something he did alone. He was in the company of those who had taught him when he was younger and those who had elected him. He was in the company of others who were also taking the same risk. He understood the situation, he said, because of what it meant to represent others. A president, he said, was only the first grain of sand in a turning hourglass. We talked about how, over time, beginning in youth An accumulation of decisions makes us who we are. Then a moment comes when we do what we must because of what we have chosen to become. An unfree person can always try to run, but sometimes a free person has to stay. Free will is character. Just a bit more. Later in the book, Timothy Snyder writes this: "We know the way back toward freedom. We have to reclaim our future. We must restore social mobility and prevent the coming catastrophe. Both can be done, but only through the conscious activity of unpredictable people, people who do what they will. Fear is not enough. It will not get us where we need to go. From the most basic facts we can build," he says, "a scaffolding of hope." He continues, "We need to ground ourselves in history and science to make a turn toward a better future. It is all within our reach." I hope so. I hope so. The words, his book feels, I don't know if it feels, it instills hope in me because what he is saying rings true. And we need the clarity of truth these days, don't we? It gives us a firm base to stand upon and to speak with love our convictions to our friends, to our family, and to those in power. I'm going to leave you with a very different poem. I always like, my screen is going disco on me. I think AI was letting me know it's alive. Anyhow, maybe it was saying, good, let's get on with it. Poetry and then end. This is Ada Limon, who is a new poet to me, but was the 24th Poet Laureate of the United States and the first Latina to hold that role. This is a poem she names A New National Anthem. And it has very little to do with hope, but I find it hopeful, so I want to share it with you. She writes, "The truth is, I've never cared for the national anthem. If you think about it, it's not a good song. Too high for most of us with those rockets' red glare. And then there are the bombs, always, there are the bombs. Once, I sang it at homecoming and threw even the tenacious high school band off key. But the song didn't mean anything then. It was just a call to the field, something you get through before the pummeling of youth. And what of those stanzas we never sing? The third that mentions no refuge could save the hireling and the slave. Perhaps the truth is every song of this country has an unsung third stanza, something brutal snaking underneath us as we blindly sing the high notes with a beer sloshing in the stands, hoping our team wins. Don't get me wrong," she continues. "I do like the flag, how it undulates in the wind like water, elemental, and best when it's humbled, brought to its knees, clung to by someone who has lost everything, when it's not a weapon, when it flickers, when it folds up so perfectly you can keep it until it's needed, until you can love it again, until the song in your mouth feels like sustenance. A song where the notes are sung even by the ageless woods, the short grass plains, the Red River Gorge, the fistful of land left unpoisoned, that song that's our birthright, that's sung in silence when it's too hard to go on, that sounds like someone's rough fingers weaving into another's, that sounds like a match being lit in an endless cave, the song that says my bones are your bones, and your bones are my bones. And isn't that enough? May we hope for what deserves to be hoped for, and may we find our hope manifest even in little flickers of birds. So may it be.